Welcome back, everybody, to the final round, round 8 of ETS Season 1 of 2018, Week 1. I am Calimdir, also known as Gabe. I'm joined in the booth by Sir Rhino for this super exciting match.
Hello, and yeah, here we go. We have Unearthly on Argenport midrange up against SecondBlue on Grenadin. So we've seen versions of both of these decks earlier today, and they're doing quite well. Both players are 6-1 in this tournament, so both very, very, very live to make top 8. Almost locks, not quite because of tiebreakers. If Unearthly loses, he'll probably still make the top 8. If SecondBlue loses, a bit more of a long shot, but still possible depending on how the breaks go. But let's not worry about that. Let's talk about the matchup at hand. Unearthly not playing Cat Burglars as a 4 of. How do you think about that?
I think it's roughly a pretty good choice. I mean, there are 2 Flame Stokers and a couple Combustion Cells in Second Blue's main deck, but I think he'll survive without the Cat Burglars.
Yeah, instead that slot's taken up by Tinker Overseer, which is pretty good against Grenadins. It flies, so that's all you need to know.
Yeah, so it turns out flying is very good against a board that stalls out with a bunch of 1/1s on the ground.
The real interesting thing with this Grenadins deck, though, isn't the Flamestokers. Like, I've played plenty of those in Grenadins, and we've seen that be a flex option. It's the main deck Sabotages. I haven't seen a lot of Grenadin lists make room for that. It's usually too busy trying to do its own thing to mess with what the opponent's doing. But 3 Sabotage here from SecondBlue, making room for that. That's interesting.
Yeah, I kind of like that choice. You only have a couple important threats, so you really want them to stick. And against a deck that just is running 4 Slay, running 2 Annihilates, running their own Sabotages, I could definitely see it being good here. And
Yeah.
also hitting Runehammer, not as valuable, but at least it's another target.
Yeah, it's not going to be backbreaking or insane at any spot. Honestly, its best hit may just be Bloodletter to make sure that doesn't get thrown on a flyer.
Yeah, very, very true. But he can also just remove whatever Bloodletter is on if he does have the removal. So
It's I think ultimately it's going to be at its best though when you sabotage for a sabotage so that their sabotages don't mess with your devours or madnesses or other pieces.
yeah,
You know, I
basically.
think that is where it's going to be at its best. So we're going to be giving the players the go ahead. They're currently waiting at mulligans. Unearthly keeping this hand on the play, even though it's only got 2 power, going to really try and leverage this crest to dig for the 3rd and potentially 4th power because he's got a 2-drop, has not great removal, but removal, and opts to keep that Instigator on top because Instigators are so good against Grenadins.
Yeah, that was a bold choice, not trying to go for a 3rd power. So this matchup, as we talked about, is very good for Unearthly for a couple reasons because of flying, um, and because of Instigator. And Instigator is very good, but Instigator is usually better against Grenadins when you have a lot of other ground attackers, and it's a way to get in damage that way. But when you're already getting damage in the air, Instigator loses a lot of value. So I don't know if I would have kept Instigator on top. I really just want to get down this Unseen Commando and impending doom as quickly as possible.
And almost like any other matchup I could think of that Instigator would have went to the bottom of the deck, but Unearthly chose to keep it on top because of the reasons you mentioned. And Second Blue found a free torch off this quarry. Stonescar Scrapper went into the void, and that's going to find another targeted Instigator here. Flamestoker not a great draw in this matchup or at this stage of the game, and choosing to hold on to Sabotage. I like that, waiting for a little time to hit a good target.
I also really like that he took that torch over Scrapper. I mean, obviously, I'm a greed master, and I would have taken the Scrapper every time, but it worked out very well for him there. Now he gets to take probably Vanquish or probably Bloodletter even.
You have the combust in hand and you know they don't have protect, but I think it's still too risky to let them have Bloodletter. It's like you have Scrap Tank to dodge to the Vanquish if you want. Scrapper can eventually give itself immediate value when it comes down. I think just cutting down on Earth's clock is more important here.
Yeah, if Scrap Tank was coming down next turn, I would have taken Vanquish. But because you're still 2 turns away from it, you just can't afford to take 8 damage for 2.
All right, Grenadin Drone, the draw here. So that gives you 2 bodies. One of them will get thrown into Combust to take out this Impending Doom and give you a bit more time to assemble the rest of your contraptions.
So this is going to be pretty rough if SecondBlue finally gets down the Scrapper and it dies to Vanquish before he gets any value out of it. That could seal the game up, but he's already having enough trouble as it is just dealing with these two flyers.
Yeah, ideally, SecondBlue just draws undepleted power into undepleted power, so you can go Scrap Tank into Scrapper, activate Scrapper. That's not happening. Grenadin joins the draw here. He is getting beaten down mercilessly in the air, even though Unearthly can't cast his Tavrod yet, and all these spot removal spells aren't that useful. His flyers are alive, and he's fine with that.
Devour is pretty good here.
Yeah, it's one of the better draws you could hope for in this spot. I think you're going to see, the A space first, then you just devour whichever Grenadin you want. Maybe the Spark Catcher just to have maximum number of bodies.
Yeah, either way, you keep the same damage on board, so it's...
I think we see another Devour here. Just got to dig for power.
Yeah, it feels bad when you could potentially draw power and Madness Devour, but that's kind of a long shot, I think. He could still... Yeah, I was going to say he could still Devour at end of turn, but if he was going to do that, he should have done that on his turn so he could potentially play a power. Now I think he's just dead.
I mean, I understand holding Devour because it is an answer to one of these flyers, and
all right,
now he won't be dead. Now you get to take that commando, get some life gain, then devour it. So that worked out. I don't know if I agree with it, though.
Yeah, it was a very risky play, but it is paying off. And now if he draws a power here, he has Scrapper next turn. Oh, but it's depleted.
Yeah.
And he's still dead.
Comes the beats, and he's still looking pretty dead. Tavrod will sharpen some horns, but you don't care about that too much. Seed of Chaos is depleted as well. So no Scrapper activation to gain 2 and stay out of lethal range.
Yep, and there's no card in SecondBlue's hand that he can play that stops him from dying next turn. And Unearthly is almost certainly going to attack.
Yep, and the other thing to note here is SecondBlue had double torch this game, but was forced to use it on Instigator, so couldn't save it for these flyers. And that's the power of Instigator. It's not a flying threat, but it still has enough evasive damage built in that SecondBlue had to treat it like one. That means he did not have the answers to these flyers in time.
Yeah, and both players drawing a pretty low amount of power that game, which worked out very well in Unearthly's favor.
Yep. Yeah, one combustion cell or some earlier Grenadins for SecondBlue rather than the expensive ones would have gone a long way. I think we'll see the Flamesokers come out at the very least. Interesting that there's some Varus favors in the side for SecondBlue.
That is very interesting.
No. But what else do you think? He's got extra torch, 3 suffocates, 3 annihilates. No shortage of good removal that SecondBlue could bring in here if he wants it.
Yeah, and I think that's on purpose because the deck's weakness is flyers, and you just need removal. So that's why he's chock full of that. He's definitely prepared for it. I don't know if it's going to be enough though, just because basically any flyer is good, whereas not any removal is good.
Yeah. Speaking of any removal being good or not good, Unearthly, I imagine, is going to take out some number of these Vanquishes, Annihilates, and Slays. I mean, that you do have to hit Gear Crunchers at some stage of the game, but as we saw that last game, he had 2 Slays and a Vanquish still in hand or something by the end of it. And you have some other great stuff to bring in. Extra Protects can go a long way. Mokdo is a big, awesome flyer that dodges Annihilate. Of course, if it gets Madness Devoured, it feels bad, but I don't think you're going to be quite worried about that. Lethrite Falchion just lets you augment your already awesome flyers and turn them into an even bigger clock. Does expose them a bit more to removal, but if you're bringing in extra Protects, I think you can tolerate.
Yeah, I think the problem is he doesn't have much he really needs to get rid of. Other than like maybe the 2 Vanquish or some amount of Sabotage or Annihilate.
Yeah, it's a question of like how many spot removals you're willing to go down on. Also, the Auric Runehammers are really bad, so those are going to come out. Like, yes, your Tavrod hit is now literally just Tavrod and Bloodletter, but I think the Falchion are as well.
You know what I wouldn't be against? Cutting Tavrod for Mokdo.
It's possible if you want to keep that 5 drop the right number. I agree that Mokdo is probably better than Tavrod in this matchup.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Tavrod being a powerhouse card, but in this matchup, especially if you're cutting Runehammers, it's going to have very little hits, and it's going to be one of your only ground attackers, so it's not going to serve much of a purpose other than potentially maybe getting you an extra bloodletter.
Yeah, it exists to draw you more more bloodletters and more falchions, and I guess more Tavrods if you think that matters. Although I don't think that's going to get through on the ground a whole lot against this Grenadin's list. It's mostly just going to try and it's a grindy card, and out grinding Grenadins is not where you want to be as Argent. You just want to beat them to death in the sky.
I think we saw I think we saw like 1 or 2 Moktas come in and the Tavrod stay in. I think he just cut. He just wanted a very threat dense deck.
I think the final tally actually ended up on 4 Tavrod, 0 Mokto. I think.
Oh, okay.
Like Unearthly was debating trying to find a way to fit in the Moktos, but opted against it for this.
I suspected the wrong person.
I think I did the same thing, but anyways, mulligans are going down, and Unearthly finds a hand with Instigator and 2 Impending Dooms. Not too shabby.
Yeah, not bad at all. Whereas on the other side, SecondBlue hand is fine, but a little awkward, and he really wants to draw some more power. It also would be a lot more fun against a deck that cared about 1/1s, which Unearthly's deck does not at all.
Yep. But it does have a Torch and an Annihilate, which will line up very well against Unearthly's hand, and a Combust. So he's got 3 removal spells for 3 threats from Unearthly and gets on the board quicker.
Yeah, so that's the part that I like about it. The 1/1s matter because of Combust.
Yeah. And Unseen Commander the draw for Unearthly. So nice stuff off the top. It turns out he has good units that line up against Grenadins, as we talked about. So Torch will come out on the Instigator here, and SecondBlue just will swamp the board with Grenadins.
Yeah, and this is about where SecondBlue wants to be. He drawn to some of his payoff cards, but he's got to get there on power first. And meanwhile, Unearthly also exactly where he wants to be.
Yeah, so now SecondBlue has the option to Quarry, and if he hits double undepleted power, can use the Annihilate. If not, might be forced to use Combust because you do not want this Unseen Commando living for long. Instead, just going to go straight Annihilate and wait to Quarry later.
Yeah, so the interesting thing about this game is that SecondBlue actually got down enough Grenadins early, like quickly, to have a relevant clock, so that removing these first 3 units will actually put a dent in Unearthly's life total. However, this last Impending Doom still might.
Yep, and because of this pressure, Unearthly drew with the Sabotage to hit this Combust in SecondBlue's hand, but he was under too much pressure to simply take a turn off the Sabotage and do nothing. So we see SecondBlue just bash in here, does not want to combust this Impending Doom just yet, probably waiting to see if something gets a weapon, I guess.
I think that's fine.
Like you're just racing anyways, you're going to lose that Grenadin whether you use Combust or not.
Yeah, it was bad against Sabotage. It was very bad against Sabotage. I understood the line because it was your last removal spell, so you really don't want to be out of removal spells, but against a deck with 4 Sabotage, it's a little rough.
The good news for SecondBlue is that he found Madness off this Quarry in the game.
And that's lethal.
I was going to say that the Impending Dooms were a clock because they're doing 2 damage a turn and didn't have lifesteal yet, but Madness is also fine.
Yeah, Impending Doom was still a clock.
Yeah, Madness very good against mid-range decks if they don't have Protects or Sabotages to mess with it, and that's what we see.
That was great from SecondBlue there to take that game over Unearthly. So we're going to game 3. I still am really feeling pretty heavily towards Unearthly, though.
No, that is the script that SecondBlue needs, right? Those early Grenadins, be the beatdown, have cheap removal in Torch and Annihilate and Combust, and then finish off with Madness. That is exactly what SecondBlue wants. So these scrap tanks and scrappers and gear crunchers, they're cool top end, but you aren't normally going to have the time to leverage their value against all of these evasive threats.
Yeah, and had that been, double Unseen Commander instead of double Impending Doom, that probably would have been a very different matchup. It could very easily have switched around at any point there. But we are into the final game now, and we're going to see one of these players definitely moving on to top 8, the other one potentially still making it.
Yeah, SecondBlue looking at a 5 power hand here, but one of the cards is Crest of Chaos, Grenadin Drone, and Scrap Tank. I I don't know if I like this one.
Yeah, I don't think it's enough. He's on the play as well. I mean, Crest does a little bit to help you. And you do have a turn 1 Grenadine drone, but you're missing the most important thing, which is the remove flyers. And I think he might have already redrawn into that.
Yeah, it's possible. Either way, the hand was his hand as turn 1 Grenadine drone comes out. Stone Scar Banner going to be opted to play here so you can quarry rather than scout. And Unearthly hand looks great. Double Valkyrie Enforcer is pretty nice here. No 2-drop yet, but Unearthly will draw one off the top of
it. I think the ideal hand has Tinker Overseer so you can hold up Protect at some point. But, we can't have everything.
Yeah, instead, Impending Doom's the draw. Unearthly doesn't have 4th power, much less a second Shadow Source. So not quite what you're looking for there. SecondBlue getting his beats on with these cheap Grenadines. And is going to get a nice little curve out here. Crest of Chaos will scout. Then has Stone Scar Scrapper into Scrap Tank. That's a pretty easy bottom for this Fire City.
Yeah, I think with the double Amethyst Waystone and having the reduced Stone Scar Scrapper, it's pretty easy. And this is pretty good seeing the Valkyrie Enforcer come down before you play your Stone Scar Scrapper. He doesn't know about the second Valkyrie Enforcer, but still.
All right, makes a Grenadine here and opts to play that instead of playing out the Scrapper without any value. I'm cool with that. But now Unearthly finds a Bloodletter. Could just slam on the Valkyrie and start hitting for 6 a turn, or could play out the other Valkyrie and hold up Protect. It's kind of a pick your opponent's poison in this.
I really like playing the Bloodletter because Valkyrie Enforcer can get value later, and both of them let you hold up Protect.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what Unearthly goes for. I also really like SecondBlue's line of play, just knowing that Unearthly, the Argenport just has so much removal that whatever your first real threat is going to lose. So getting that initial value out of Stone Scar Scrapper is going to be huge.
Yep, SecondBlue Ace Spaces here first, maybe to check for pauses, and see something that tips him off that he doesn't want to go in on this Annihilate. Valkyrie Enforcer did gain 6 life, but then doesn't get to moving forward. Going to try and tax Unearthly into holding up this Protect every turn, which Unearthly should be able to do with the way his hand's set up.
Yeah, and now this Valkyrie Enforcer gets to silence Stone Scar Scrapper, or he could just slay it. But I kind of like the Valkyrie Enforcer personally. Puts more pressure on SecondBlue, and you want to end this game quickly.
Yeah, I could buy that. Either way, it's costing 3, and yeah, getting that extra body down sounds pretty nice to me. Are there really more valuable silence targets for Valkyrie Enforcer than Stone Scar Scrapper? Like, Scrap Tank's just this thing that grows large, but Slay can deal with that as well.
Yeah, and Gear Cruncher, I like killing Scrapper more because Scrap Tank can just get big, and even like before you silence it, and it's still a problem. And Gear Cruncher, the problem, I mean, the activation ends the game, sure, but it's a problem no matter what. Just if Gear Cruncher comes down, you're going to have a bad time.
So Unearthly opted to go with the Slay. That also kind of affects his clock, right? If he had gone Valkyrie Enforcer, he's swinging for 9 over the next 2 turns.
Yeah, exactly.
Instead, only swinging for 6. So that gives SecondBlue an extra turn here to navigate this matchup.
Actually, I think if he plays the Valkyrie Enforcer this turn, it's still 2-turn lethal.
Oh, sure, that's fair because he can still swing for 9 next turn.
Yeah,
that's true. Doesn't actually change the clock. So I don't think ultimately it made a difference one way or another.
Yep, that's what we learned here today. So Sabotage is very good here because that means that Unearthly has to preemptively protect. So he might actually protect his 6/6 here.
Yep, but that'll get the Annihilate in response.
And that's a huge blowout.
Yeah, so this is what we were talking about with Sabotage being really cool tech from the Grenadines here. Not normally what you're thinking, but being super useful, giving SecondBlue a shot at winning this game now. Still a long shot, but at least a shot.
That was some really cool play that we just saw there from SecondBlue. That's an interaction you don't really get to have a lot, especially on ladder.
Yeah, it might happen a lot in the Argenport mirrors and stuff like that, but not typically what you would expect out of Grenadines versus Argenport. Now SecondBlue has to decide if he wants to play this Amethyst Waystone. It will damage both players and give him an extra look at a card, but it'll also give Unearthly an extra look at a card when he been stuck on power and influence this game. So he opts to play it out. It gives him more shots at finding things like Madness, though, that can really swing this race in his favor with Unearthly at 13 and 12 from Amethyst Waystone.
Yeah, and Unearthly already pretty far behind in this race.
Ugh.
He can't cast anything other than these skaters, which are pretty big. That's a big deal. But
yeah,
okay. Now that he's okay, never mind. At 6 with 2 instigators, it's not looking great for SecondBlue. But anything to deal with one of these units does a lot here. Like Unearthly still doesn't have lifesteal. If it wasn't for the instigators blocking the way, an all-out attack here would be like a 2-turn clock. So,
but he does have 2 instigators,
yeah.
and Unearthly wins this game.
Yeah, basically.
There is nothing SecondBlue can do here other than try and bluff that he has removal when Unearthly A spaces or something like that. But
I think he lives with 1, right? If Unearthly A spaces.
Well, both instigators have to be blocked.
Right. You're right. Never mind. That's how instigator works.
Yeah. So instigator math dictates that he would be taking at minimum 7 damage if Unearthly swings out. I maybe would have tried to bluff the spot removal there and see if Unearthly calls your bluff or not. Gooping it up is fine as well.
I like how just like, well, this could go either way. Wait a minute. Instigator's a card.
Yep. Yeah. Unit dies, somebody else dies. That's how it works.
Yeah, exactly like that. Word for word.
Random even.
But yeah, that'll be our round 8. That puts Unearthly at 7 and 1, which locks him up for top 8. And SecondBlue can still make it in on breakers. We might still see the Grenadin Master in top 8.
Yep, we'll just have to wait and see. I'm not sure how many more matches are outstanding in this round, but 3 outstanding. So I don't know if we're working on any kind of backups, waiting for word from that. It looks like them are further down the standings. There's so it looks like this is all wrapped up here. We've already got who our 7 and 1 or better results are. So we've got about half of the top 8 figured out already. We have the Tristero going the full 8-0 sweep on Praxis midrange, first ever 8-0 in the ETS, because we've never had an 8-round ETS open before. So congrats to the Tristero for making history there. And then Ferrisbro we saw in the previous rounds with Skycrag Aggro, 7-1. Bruised by God ended up 7-1 with Huru Flyer. So his only loss was the one we caught on camera. And then Unearthly, of course, we just covered 7-1 on Argenport midrange. Congrats to all those players for doing excellently well. And now we got to get to the nitty gritty and figure out which 6 and 2 players will make it into the top 8.
So yeah, it looks like we'll be back with top 8 after this break.